All right, so let's finish off Act 2, which I title Spies and Spying. We've done part 1, which is basically Polonius interacting with Hamlet with his theory of thwarted love. The fact that Hamlet's love for Ophelia is frustrated is what has driven him mad. The second part of Scene 2 sort of focuses on Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, these new characters that we know were meant to contrast Horatio in terms of being good friends. So that's basically how Scene 2 goes, right? Is that Hamlet at first interacts with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, then the actors arrive and he interacts with them and he insults Polonius along the way. Kind of Hamlet's theme for the rest of the play will be insulting Polonius. And then he gives his second of his 4 soliloquies, which is a self-beratement soliloquy where he's angry at himself. And he'll do this twice, at the end of Act 2 and at the end of Act 4. So as we mentioned, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are meant to contrast Horatio in terms of being false friends versus Horatio, the H in Horatio standing for honest, being a true friend. Hamlet seems okay with them at first. Hamlet is polite most of the time. It's when he realizes that who you are and what you're really about that he starts to turn on you if he feels like you're on the opposite side. That's exactly how this scene goes. At first he's sort of friendly, but then when he realizes that they are sent for, that they are paid by the king and queen, he turns on them. The text makes it very clear that he barely knows them. He never really addresses them individually by their names. He always just says, you two, or hey, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. He just doesn't know which is which. On the one hand, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern can be funny characters because they're such bad spies, right? They're so clumsily obvious in their questioning Hamlet. And that's one way of reading them, is that they're kind of dumb or they're comical. And it is funny that they do confess that they were sent for within 20 lines. But on the other hand, you can read them as 2 guys who were kind of forced in this position. They are being paid, but they don't really have an option to say no to the king and queen. They must obey their dread command. And their hearts are not really in it, and that's why they're bad spies. I kind of like that reading a little bit more because it makes them kind of tragic characters in their own right and not just comic side characters. But they haven't seen each other in a while, and they kind of know each other a little bit, so they start with some banter. As they approach, Hamlet questions them the same way he questioned Horatio and everybody else in this play. What are you doing in Elsinore? And they say that, that fortune has sent them here. Well, I hope she's not treating you badly, says Hamlet. And they're like, well, we're not on the top of her cap, nor not on the bottom of her shoes. We're somewhere in the middle of her favors. We're in her fortune's privates. And Hamlet says, oh, in fortune's privates? Well, then, most true, she is a strumpet. Now, this play, unfortunately, is filled with lots of words that are ugly about women. Variations on the word prostitute, whore, drab, strumpet, those kind of things. And Hamlet sees Lady Fortune as a whore. He kind of sees all ladies as whores after his mother married so quickly. Remember that in his first soliloquy, he said that frailty, thy name is woman. He sees women as weak and fickle, and he doesn't respect that. Now, we don't talk about Lady Fortune very much in our day. We tend to talk about luck, which is related to it, Lady Luck. Lady Fortune has a wheel, and you can be at the top of the wheel and doing well, or you can be at the bottom of the wheel and doing bad. And Hamlet feels unlucky. We might say that Lady Fortune is random. That's another word we use in our time period to sort of rail at the chaos that we sometimes feel in the world when we want the world to be ordered. So they have this little bantering conversation about fortune in which Hamlet says ugly things about fortune, which is interesting because later when he requests some speeches of the actors, one of the actors' speeches rails against fortune and says, out, thou strumpet fortune, and Hamlet just eats it up because he agrees with the actor and thinks that fortune is a whore. So they're just bantering back and forth, and Hamlet keeps making everything negative, and they keep trying to make things positive because they are trying to cheer him up. They are supposed to draw him onto pleasures, right? But Hamlet says, what brings you to prison? And they're like, prison? This is Denmark. We love Denmark. And Hamlet says, no, Denmark's a prison. And indeed, it is a prison for him. He was denied the ability to go back to college in Germany, and he feels trapped. So he keeps contradicting Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and everything they says, but in a sort of bantering, friendly, and maybe even manly kind of way. And there's lots of other fun lines in the scene and lots of other fun jokes we could look at. But I guess the main thing that we need to know is that Hamlet figures out that they are spies. And once he figures that out, he starts giving them sort of riddling lines. He likes to speak in riddles for the most part. And we learn in Act 5 that he was friends with a jester named Yorick when he was little. And that's one way of reading Hamlet, is that he's a jester. Jesters often make fun of power, and they often imitate and mock. And Hamlet does some imitating and mocking of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern here. Hamlet likes to talk circles around people. If you talk fancy to him, he'll talk more fancy back to you and sort of leave you lost. And they're often at a loss here as we go through it. If Polonius thinks Hamlet is mad because of thwarted or frustrated love, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern think he's mad because of thwarted ambition. Now, I think they're close to the truth. Hamlet is mad about many things, but one of them is probably a secret, latent desire to be the next king, or a feeling that the crown is his rightfully. So he tries to lead them astray and tell them that it's not that. When they say, oh, Denmark's too narrow for you, it's too narrow for your mind, Hamlet says, oh, I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself the king of infinite space, were it not that I have bad dreams. That's kind of the madness talk of Hamlet, but I don't need a country. I could be the king of a nutshell, and that would be infinite space to me. He's often leading people astray into those kind of things. So Hamlet acts like it's not ambition, but I think they're kind of close to the truth. And within 20 lines, as we said, he's cross-examined them, and he says, be even and direct with me whether you were sent for or no. And they say, my lord, we were sent for. Once he tells them that, Hamlet knows who they are and knows where he stands. And he kind of speaks to them honestly and sadly and not honestly at the same time. Hamlet's always a little tricky like that. He makes a speech. A speech is a little bit different than a soliloquy because a soliloquy occurs when he's alone on stage and we're hearing his thoughts. He actually delivers it to us. But a speech is just delivered to somebody on stage. This speech is commonly called the "What a Piece of Work is a Man" speech. And in it, Hamlet expresses how depressed he is. Now that's honest, but he tells them, I don't know why I'm so depressed. But actually, he probably has a pretty good idea. In this speech, which has often been praised for describing what it feels like to be depressed very well, Hamlet says that he describes the earth, the sky, and human beings. It's a very Renaissance speech where man is the measure of all things. And all those things are wonderful, the earth, the sky, and humankind. But to Hamlet, they're nothing. The earth is a sterile promontory. This majestical roof is a foul, pestilent congregation of vapors. And man, who is the paragon of animals, is a quintessence of dust. Hamlet says nothing makes him happy, and when you're depressed, nothing really does make you happy. And he ends his speech by saying, man delights not me, and he's sort of sad. And he looks at Rosencrantz, and Rosencrantz is like, and Hamlet says, why are you smiling when I say man delights not me? I'm sitting here pouring out my heart and talking about how depressed I am, and you're smiling at me? And Rosencrantz immediately tries to back up and says, oh, I'm sorry, there was no such thing in my thoughts. I was just thinking that if man delights not you, what Lenten entertainment will the players receive? And he points, and the players are arriving. What we might call an acting troupe. And for the first time in the play, we see Hamlet not happy, but happier. He cheers up a lot. So Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are doing their job. They're drawing him onto pleasures as they should. And we see that Hamlet knows quite a lot about the actors. As the actors are sort of arriving and unpacking, Polonius comes in to tell them the actors have arrived, a little late behind the times, because Hamlet already knows this. So Hamlet, brings Rosencrantz and Guildenstern into his confidence and starts mocking Polonius, calls him a diaper, a baby wearing diapers because he's an old man, it says that he always has old news, sort of goes out of his way to sort of make fun of Polonius. And Polonius is indeed offensive to Hamlet on every level, but Hamlet's sort of a little unfair to him. Polonius will not respect the actors. He does interrupt them twice and seems to be kind of like just distasteful about them. But Hamlet defends them. And because Hamlet defends them, we often think that it's Shakespeare secretly defending his art form. So we see that Hamlet knows a lot about acting. He's met these players before. He calls the player king his old friend. And he requests speeches that he knows by heart. Hamlet even starts to perform some. A lot of these speeches are cut in performance because they are long and dated and kind of boring, but they're interesting thematically. Basically, we see Hamlet snobby. He likes these kind of elite plays. But the thing he requests is he wants the speech about the murder of the king of Troy when Troy fell. And the king of Troy was Priam. Priam was killed by a Greek named Pyrrhus, and his wife Hecuba witnessed it, the queen, and she wept. Now, just think about why that fits the play Hamlet very well. Hamlet wants to hear the speech where the king is killed, partly because it makes him grieve because his father was a king who was killed. But then on another level, Hamlet's like, I also want to kill a king. And so he's sort of interested in that. He also requests the speech of a woman crying over her dead husband so passionately that the gods themselves cry. Now, why would Hamlet like that? Well, maybe it's because his mom did not behave that way, right? And he likes to hear a proper queen. As the actor's delivering the speech about Queen Hecuba, the actor cries real tears as he describes the tears of the gods. Hamlet is moved by it, but Polonius says, oh my gosh, she's crying real tears over something that's not real. Prithee no more. Hamlet thinks it's good though, and Polonius thinks it's kind of bad class. So it moves Hamlet deeply, and Hamlet tells Polonius to take the actors and see that they're well bestowed, and we'll hear a play tomorrow. And he asks the lead actor as he's leaving, hey, old friend, can you do the play, The Murder of Gonzago? And the actor says yes, and Hamlet says, can you do some lines that I'm going to add in there? Showing us that Hamlet is kind of a director, kind of a writer, and kind of an actor. After all, he's been acting since the beginning of Act 2. He's been acting like he's insane. The actor says he can, and Hamlet sends him off with Polonius supposed to take care of him. Then Hamlet is left alone on stage. He often has lines that show us how much pressure Hamlet's under, like, now I am alone. And he immediately berates himself. We're at the end of Act 2, and he still hasn't done his revenge. And he's inspired by the actor to reflect upon himself. He'll do this twice in the play, at the end of Act 2, and at the end of the middle of Act 4. He'll see something in the world, and it'll make him think, what's wrong with me? So the actor cried real tears over Hecuba. What's Hecuba to him, or he to Hecuba, that he should weep for her, is what Hamlet says. Hecuba's not real. Nobody even knows where Troy is. It's just like that old a story. It's practically myth, or it is myth. And Hamlet says, what would that actor do if he had a reason to cry like I have a reason to cry? And Hamlet says, what's wrong with me? Who calls me a coward? Who plucks off my beard and blows it in my face? I deserve it. Something's wrong with me. And Hamlet just sort of gets really carried up into this high point of the speech where he screams the word vengeance. It's always embarrassing. The actor has to slam himself against the wall or fall on the ground or something, because the next line is a deflation. He screams the word, oh, vengeance! And then he says, why, what an ass am I? This is most brave, that I, the son of a dear father murdered, prompted to my revenge by heaven and hell, must, like a whore, unpack my heart with words. See, what's bothering Hamlet is that he's all talk and no action. His action and his words don't match, and Hamlet sees that as false or phony. He wants to be a man, not a boy. Boys are all talk, men are action. So he tells us something that's new to us, some new information. At the end of Act 1, Hamlet said he believed the ghost 100%. But at the end of Act 2, Hamlet says, it may be that the ghost I've seen was a damned spirit. It could have been something that looked like my father, and lied to me and told me Claudius killed my father, and I'm going to kill Claudius and damn my soul and go to hell. Maybe it abuses me to damn me. It's very easy to abuse a person who's depressed, is what Hamlet says, and he's right. He says, I need to confirm the ghost's truth, but there's no physical evidence or anything like that. So Hamlet comes up with a kind of brilliant psychological way of confirming Claudius's guilt. He says that he has heard that guilty creatures watching a play that resembles what they have done have sometimes been so struck to the soul that they have presently proclaimed their malefactions. I'm going to have these actors play something like the murder of my father before the king, and I'll watch Claudius, and if he blenches, I know that the ghost told me the truth, and I know my course. And so Hamlet is going to psychologically confirm the ghost's truth of this. Now, this is a bit of a contradiction in the play, because he'd already come up with that plan when he requests the murder of Gonzago, obviously. But then he comes up with the idea in the soliloquy as well. And nobody's ever really solved that interpretive problem in this play of problems. But he ends the act with a wonderful rhyme couplet, right? He says, you know what? The play is the thing wherein I'm going to catch the conscience of the king. And he sets us up for Act 3, for the play within a play, where inside the middle of the play Hamlet, at the very climax, in Act 3 of 5 acts, we're going to watch the play Hamlet inside the play Hamlet. It's kind of brilliant.